to fix the road. As I've said multiple times in the past, we're not against solar, but we are against an industrial-sized solar farm in a small rural community.
So I am here because when I read the Bennington Banner article.
You're just gonna announce your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Stella Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah. I realized after the article appeared in the Banner that a lot of people, including the select board, might not know of all of the research that we've been doing and all of the things that certainly I've been on a steep learning curve about the environment and all kinds of different elements of this project. And so we've had experts on the natural environment, stormwater related public health and safety issues, greenhouse gas impacts, how the forests regulate temperature and carbon sequestration, and a lot more. So I thought that it would be really important to share what I've learned with you, because I don't know, how much you've kept up with the research that we've been doing. And my hope is that some of the experts that have testified for us will come and testify for you, and that you will have the same learning curve that I've had in this whole process. I got interested in this process because I'm a landscape painter, and I was interested in it for aesthetic reasons. My property backs up onto the Studio Hill Farm, and I often go up there to paint the landscape because the views up there are just incredible. And so I've also taken groups of painters there to do workshops on landscape painting. And these have included people from out of state, because our state has the reputation for natural beauty, and they've been happy to come here and paint the landscape. So when I heard that there was going to be an industrial sized solar display on the landscape, I was a little bit devastated, because I certainly wouldn't include that in any of my paintings. It would make them unsaleable. But I also wouldn't want to paint there, because the landscape is important to me in the sense that when you have a continuous view of natural beauty, of fields and forests and grasslands, then you get a sense of peace and serenity that I think we all share and we all recognize. And so I wanted to know more about it. I found out that the state had hired an aesthetic expert to decide if that view was worth saving as part of their inquiry. The state hired this aesthetic expert, but the solar company paid him $40,000 for his opinion. For me, that's a lot of money for an opinion. And when there was a group that walked the property, and together of about 40 or 50 people, and when they ended up at the Studio Hill Farm, there was not a person in that group who wasn't awed by the view. Everyone was totally in agreement that it was a beautiful view and worth saving. So that satisfied the first requirement of the state. Is this a view that an ordinary citizen would say, yes, it's iconic, it's Vermont, it's meaningful? And but then I found out that there's another requirement by the state, which I have to confess I really don't understand, because it has to do with percentages. And it goes something like this. The lawyer for the solar company said that only about 10% of the view was compromised by this proposed solar site. So it wasn't worth saving because the percentage was too low. And in my mind, the aesthetics of that doesn't make sense, because if you consider, like, say, a painting that we all know has been considered a major important work of art for centuries, like Leonardo's Mona Lisa, and you take two little bitty lines and go like that, you've made a mockery of something that people consider beautiful. And to me, that's less than 1%. And so 10% of the view being acceptable as not ruining the view makes no sense to me. And I mean, my aesthetics are obviously different than the person who gave the aesthetic evaluation for the state, but I very sincerely call into question his methods. I paint portraits as well as landscapes, and if I were to paint your portrait and paint everything exactly the way I saw it, except for your nose, I don't think you would pay me for it. And I think that that little less than 10% of a blemish on that painting or on that view would ruin the view. So I think that surrounding Harrington Cobble with solar panels would be like watching someone's portrait or cutting off our nose to spite our face and not thinking anyone's going to notice. The difference is natural versus industrial, straight versus linear versus natural. And in the natural world, the reason the landscape is important not to interrupt it with industrial installations is because the industrial installations sit there unresponsive completely to the environment around them. They don't bend or change with the weather or the wind or the rain, and the colors don't modify with the seasons. They are, for me, a real blemish on the landscape. And as Mike said, none of us is against solar. We're very much pro-solar, but I feel that the solar fields belong within an industrial landscape on an industrial site. And there's plenty of opportunity on the rooftops of big box stores, on the tops of homes, buildings, schools, parking lots and brownfields. There's a quarry underneath my house, which is totally ruined for any use. And that would be a great solar field. And so even for me, even a 5-acre project is too much if it's sited in the wrong place. So for me, the siting is what I have a problem with. And I think that one of the most important things that we learned from the evidentiary hearings was the confirmation that the Vermont Stormwater Manual requires a design for Shaftsbury that is designed for a 6-inch rainfall event. And that's what the solar company is preparing for. As Mike said, Washington County, north of us, just had an 8.4-inch rainfall event with significant flooding. Connecticut, just south of us, had a 10-inch rainfall event. And it was considered a 1,000-year event, but like the Washington County event, that was the second, it was considered a 100-year event, but that's the second time within 1 year that they've had that flooding. So I think that we can all agree that the Vermont Stormwater Manual is out of date. And that by using their criteria of a 6-inch stormwater event, the state is not protecting us. And that needs to be addressed. This solar installation will cause the loss of tree buffers and permeable soil, and we can expect more flooding as a result. Our neighbors down below the solar project are worried, and they're worried with good cause. And the Bennington County Conservation District is considering setting up a public meeting so that landowners in Shaftsbury can learn how to protect themselves from the eventual flooding that this is going to cause. It's a huge risk for the town of Shaftsbury. It really is. And I don't think that the money that the solar company pays us is going to be a drop in the bucket when we start to deal with the results of flooding. There's nothing in the agreement with the developer about how the stormwater basins will be maintained. There's very little specified about the basin and when it will be built. Will it be built before or after the ground has been compacted by the trucks and the equipment used to clear the land? Will it be built before or after the trees have been cut? And remember, it's only being built for a 6-inch rainfall event, and it's not enough. The Vermont Agency of Natural Resources has not yet granted stormwater permits. The Vermont Department of Transportation has not yet given approval for a cutoff from Route 7 for the developer to access Holy Smoke Road. This project is not proceeding smoothly as Reed Wills wants you to be. The town has an MOU with the developer, and it can be updated and it can be modified. This has been done before by other towns. So I hope that other people who have much more knowledge than I do come and talk to you and share their knowledge with you about this project. And I hope you will reconsider what the town might be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. We will all observe.
I have questions. So you're saying that it is within the ability of the board to modify
The MOU,
This
Yeah.
town agreement,
the town agreement. It is.
well, it's possible to try to reopen negotiations. But of course, when you reopen negotiations on such a thing, you potentially lose the entire agreement. It's a negotiation. So, yes, you can always go back to a contract and request to renegotiation.
Well, the question is it worth it for the town not to reopen negotiations? Given the dangers involved.
You know, much of what we said, we're gonna ask the ANR. Agency of Natural Resources to look into the stormwater as well.
Well, they're the folks, as I understand it, they and the PUC are the people with the influence here. The
Unfortunately,
only influence the town has is to potentially request renegotiating that
right,
post-town agreement, which we discussed.
it has been done in the past. Yes, it's possible.
I'd urge you to look over the host town agreement and the other contracts you have with them. Because,
It's the only contract.
so if there's nothing about flooding. And we have a major flood on Holy Smoke Road that the town has to deal with. That's gonna cost the town an awful lot of money. So it's likely not gonna seem that what they're paying in taxes is as good as we imagine.
Yeah, I mean, climate change is gonna cost us all a lot of money with the flooding all over. the
Yeah.
town, yeah. Other questions or? Yes,
Thank you for your
thank
time.
you very much.
Thank you very much.
February report.
Hello, everybody. Why don't we start with looking at July, okay, because I think we never got a chance to put a,
Cash flow.
yes, please. We didn't look at the budget projections, for the month yet. Let's see, the, number that should jump out at you there is second from the bottom of the receipts. You see the highway state aid. That is because of the flooding, it just disappeared, but it was there, and it was $155,000. That represents 3/4 of our annual payment, which usually comes in quarters. They sped it up to get money to the towns that were affected by the recent floods, far worse than we were, but that was very welcome to especially places in the north of the state. The fourth quarter actually came just a couple of days later in August. So you'll see when we get down to the budget projections that we have quite a bit more money coming in July than we usually see, and that's almost all because of that that highway state aid being sped up. So it's just a timing issue. If you want to look just at the bottom. So we look down at the budget status there. The tiny bit more. There we go. So you see that both revenue and expenditures are running a little bit ahead of what we saw last year. That last year was less than 5%, and for revenues and expenditures were a little bit ahead. That's rounding error at this point. That
Jen,
they
can you just?
oh
Thank you. It's the all in the variable.
Yeah.
Sorry. Wayne.
You know, I'm just saying that the revenues are because of that sped up highway money, and the expenditures is probably mostly timing. It's too early to make any real projections, but I just thought I would point out that both of those are running a little bit ahead of where they were last year. We take a quick look at the reserve accounts. I don't think there's much going on there, so I'll be quick. Yeah, you can see there's that sidewalk fund, that was a grant coming in, and the water department is just water payments, normal water payments. That's the only activity we saw there. You see the interest rates continue to be doing us favors with this account. If you go down a tiny bit more. There we go. Old timers will remember when that interest would be couple $100. So that's where we see the effect of interest rates in our town. So any questions about either of those? Got a lot of other stuff to cover, so if we can move on. Okay, let's look at the amended tax rate calculation, please. That's exactly right. I remember when we talked about this the first time, I said there's a possibility we're going to need to revisit this because I did not in fact have the signed off form from the listers. I got a little bit ahead of myself, and I apologize for that. The only change is that our Nemrick contractor had not remembered to include the the Taconic Grange as a tax exempt entity, which was voted on in the last town meeting. So that means that we have to take on that an extra 3,000 or so. And this is all in the local agreement portion of the municipal tax. The other thing is that we realized that when we acquired that house over there, it was after the grand list was already closed. Which means that the system is going to produce a tax bill for that. As of April, it was not a tax exempt entity. Now it is, but the grand list is frozen. So Nemrick said I was going to need to approach the select board to abate that, but I'm not really sure about how the accounting is going to work. I mean, it seems a little silly for the town of Shaftsbury to write a check to the town of Shaftsbury for a property the town of Shaftsbury owns and shouldn't be paying taxes, will not be paying taxes on in the future. So I have an email into our external auditor, to a professional auditor, to see how we're supposed to handle the accounting. But for our purposes, those taxes there is going to be a tax. It's going to be generated. It's going to have the name of the previous owner on it, because that's what happens when the grand list is frozen. You've heard me say that many times. So, and there were a couple of little tiny other things that affected it too. But so the bottom line is that the amended rate is going to need to go up to 0.5639. It's just a tiny bit higher than what we approved before. I believe that on a property assessed at $250,000, this will represent about $20 higher in municipal taxes versus what you already voted on. You go down to the very bottom. That's my sensitivity analysis that shows that will cover our budget, and it would not have been covered before because of those changes that I had to make. Is that all clear? I'm talking very fast. Poor Shelley is gonna have to figure out what I was saying. I'll walk her through it if I have to. So, yeah, so I mean, it just means that we have to cover those somehow, and depending on what answer I get from Jordan, our auditor, there's probably gonna be some accounting that we're gonna have to go through. But as far as I understand it, that money is in the grand list. It has to be raised. So somebody has to pay it, and we're the owners now. Okay. Okay, so I think that somebody needs to propose that we amend the municipal tax for the upcoming tax year that's actually started on July 1st to 0.5639 per $100 of assessed value.
I'll make that motion to adopt the amended tax rate of 5.5639 per $1,000.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Any discussion? Any questions for Melanie on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And I will be getting the tax bills out. They will be available for people who are really in a hurry. I can email them probably later this week, but I will attempt to print and mail them on paper within the next week to 10 days. And then I also wanted to talk about the
Kicking the can down the road.
I believe you already voted on this, but I wanted to talk about it in case you had any questions, because I wasn't here when it was presented. So this is the internal controls memo that I think by statute I have to prepare every year. And because a couple of things changed this year, I wanted to bring it to your attention, especially, I mean, the most important one is what's going on at the transfer station. And the professional auditors have been asking us to do what we have now done for years. And so that's really a significant change to our internal control. The fact that there's now, receipts offered, there's a cash register, it tightened up the way money is handled. So that was an important change. Yeah, that was really the most significant thing. I mean, obviously changing from Joan Vargo to Tiffany, is reflected in this as well. But if you had any questions about anything, I think you probably, was it distributed? Did you have a chance to look at it?
It was distributed with a packet, so we all had to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not starting from scratch. Very little has changed. Because we have such a very small staff, there are always going to be, it's not ever going to be perfect internal controls, just because we don't have, 10 people, which probably would be better to have that many eyeballs on it, but within, the limitations of our staff size, the, professional auditors have signed off on our internal controls. And they think we're doing a pretty good job. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but you can see it in the reports they write every year. But this is the one hole that they really wanted, and it is now. So any questions about internal controls? Okay, I think that's all I've got. Any questions about anything else?
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
got that.
It's great that that one whole event, right?
Yeah,
Just with
very nice.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
going from the cash box.
There's a little bit of a learning curve, but
Mhm.
it's definitely a better way to be handling. And I don't think the townsfolk are too happy about it, but they'll get on board.
But it's more fair.
It's,
Growing
yeah,
pains.
It's with distributors.
Yes.
than
yeah, I mean, we're
the
discovering
monetary bill.
that there's some people who were taking advantage of it before, and it's with tighter controls down there, and it makes, it's actually much better for Shelley, fairer, especially for people who have to work there. Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Okay. Open meeting policy adoption.
Excuse me.
Shall I read this out loud? Since this is a new town policy. The purpose of this open meeting policy is ensuring that public meetings remain open and accessible is the governing value that prompts the creation of this policy. In keeping with Vermont's open meeting law, Act 133 S55, which was updated on July 1st, 2024, the Shaftsbury Select Board recognizes that hybrid and remote access to meetings can strengthen civic engagement and support transparent, efficient decision-making. This policy will ensure that public meetings are open and accessible for all Shaftsbury citizens. This policy also promotes transparency and uniformity in public access. This policy applies to all public meetings held by the town of Shaftsbury's boards and committees, including both non-advisory and advisory bodies. So every committee that meets. Except in the event of exigent circumstances, all meetings of boards and committees will be held at the designated public location of Paul Hall in the second floor meeting room. Virtual attendance options like Zoom will be available for all meetings, along with public access to the web link. Public meeting warning notices will, as always, be provided in advance of meetings. They will be posted on the town's website at Paul Hall and at the Shaftsbury and North Bennington post offices. They will also be emailed to various town officials and to the Bennington Banner in the spirit of public awareness. All meetings will be recorded on the virtual site and will be then posted on the town's website. Virtual platform links to our recorded public meetings are in compliance with Act 133 S55 of the Vermont Open Meeting Law. These platform links will be available for at least 30 days. Minutes will be approved and posted promptly, usually at the same time as the recording. However, we may post the recording first. Select Board will work to ensure that Cole Hall remains accessible for individuals with disabilities and will provide necessary accommodations for in-person and virtual attendance, including closed caption. Building on accommodations for the COVID-19 pandemic, in the event of an emergency, we will allow entirely remote meetings in order to ensure public access to pertinent information. If there is an equipment failure on our end, all scheduled meetings will proceed, as happened tonight. There was an equipment failure. All scheduled meetings will proceed and we will repair or replace said equipment as soon as possible. The scheduled meeting will not be canceled. There will be regular review and updates to this policy as needed to ensure alignment with further updates to Act 133(s)55 of Vermont's open meeting law. Any second thoughts about this before we pass this?
No.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to adopt the open meeting policy. According to that, pretty sticky about it. I'll second that.
Thank you, Tony. Any further discussion of this?
Signature ones, I think.
Yep. Just say, thank you, the two of you so much. Wonderful. Wonderful. Sorry, go ahead. We have to vote on the first. And then I don't know. I got the second. What do you want?
Yeah, right.
Okay, all in favor of passing this?
Aye.
Okay.
There's the laugh. His laugh, I love it.
Okay, so number 9 was the Shaftsbury solar project neighbors, but they spoke during the public comments. Thank you. Thank you for your eloquence. Whole water leaks.
It is very upsetting. It's still leaking. When we were speaking about it in the previous select board meeting, Marlene went downstairs to find the windowsills were sopping wet. I think it was just a thunderstorm. So it's happening all the time. I have calls out to MSK Engineering and also to Chris Panesi at Nance Engineering. I'm just kind of waiting. I want to assume that they're still on vacation and wrapping up vacations, hopefully, to get someone in here and check things out. In the meantime, we have the assessor that was moved up here, and then the town clerk will move up here after September 10th,
After the election.
after the election for the school. That's really kind of the only update. It's still leaking and it still needs to be dealt with.
Still leaking and it still needs to be done. So pretty soon we'll all be up here.
Yes, you had a good idea today, Jen. I think I need to reach out to Joe Vatican to see what the floor can handle, the amount of weight.
I'm very nervous about bringing up all the file cabinets.
file
They're
cabinets.
extremely heavy.
Not a good idea.
And this building was not built for that.
This floor was not built for that, so we have nooks and crannies we can put them in, but depending on what Joe says, you know, we might need something externally for a couple of months to move them out there. They're just very heavy, those file cabinets, especially the listers.
Isn't that part of why they would move downstairs to begin with? Right.
I mean, we can put some by the front door on the sides,
Side.
as long as that's completely open for a fire exit.
Right.
We can put some
in the corner.
against the wall over here. I can take another one in my office,
You take one of my.
but she has 9. And she needs them all the
She has
time.
them all for the.
And that's not even counting anything Marlene has to come upstairs. And
Yeah.
we might be able to put Marlene in with Shelley
Shelley.
if things, we can get her in there. But it depends on what she has to bring up, but
Mhm,
we're gonna have to store that stuff somewhere. We have nowhere to store it.
that's right.
So
So
we might have to get some type of a container.
External Container.
And Mike said he knows, I guess they did that years ago before my time.
Mhm,
That they had a storage container in the parking lot for a while
Mhm.
when they did the construction up
Oh,
here.
has
We
go
might have to
somewhere.
do the same.
Yeah.
For the stuff
Gotta
that's
clear it
down
out.
there. That doesn't have to come upstairs. But weight wise, I'm concerned about the file cabinets.
Mhm.
But like over there, I'm not concerned about the weight. And if we put some over here and one in my office, I don't have a lot of room in my closet.
Even-
But I can take one.
Distribute it.
Tiffany can take one over there. If it's against the walls, I'm not concerned, but if we put another person in the center and depends on what we bring up, I'd like Joe to come in and,
And
Give
weigh
us-
in on it, so to speak.
yes,
And then we had
Yeah.
Monument Electric in here with Adam figuring out where the workstations would go, where, because we had wiring, we had phones. Electricity. Server, everything. That big
that-
copy machine as well, like it's gonna be,
threw a wrench into that,
we'll figure it out.
a new phone
The new
system.
phone
'Cause
system.
everything has got to come upstairs temporarily. We'll work it out.
We'll work it out.
You have more file cabinets than what you had before we revamped all this. We used to have so many file cabinets that we actually use them as walls. Yeah, no,
Right.
who remembers that?
Some of them are stored upstairs, or
Okay, so.
Yeah, some of them are,
Yeah.
yeah, some old ones.
yeah,
I just wondered if you actually had more than what you. what we
Yes.
had.
Probably, I think they're bigger
yeah, Gina's office
as
is,
well.
has many,
Many.
many. They're huge.
It's gonna be, we'll
Um,
figure out the
Even
logistics.
got some new ones.
We'll get it done.
addition.
Yeah.
We got a free grill.
but the other ones still exist, but they're upstairs.
Hmm.
But I don't know everything that Marlene's gonna have to bring up.
Yeah.
Presidential
Mhm.
election, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Everything but the
ancillary
vault.
items that happen with presidential elections.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Thank
this
you
is
for
quite a
being
work in
flexible.
process. Yeah.
Gotta roll with
Working
it and,
because
and
we know this is not
It's-
ideal for
it'll be an
any,
adventure. good thing we
anybody.
all get along very well.
It is.
It's temporary, it's a temporary, inconvenience. It's in, we are in flux,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be fun. Though, it's
Yeah.
fine.
okay. 61 Buck Hill update.
That
Oh,
was
that's
64, or 61. You mean the
We
house,
mean
right?
64,
You mean
right?
64? Yeah, I put 61 because I'm so used to writing the address for Cole Hall. The project is half done, the barn is down, and the house is being worked on this week. So slowly but surely, but not really slowly. But Matt Morse is doing a really good job and we're pleased to discover or find out that he's recycling everything. Concrete goes one place, metal goes another place, so reduce, repurpose, recycle. Hopefully it'll all go to good use, but that house should be down this week, I think.
Thank you, Judge, for updating the website.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Good
it's
job.
been wonderful.
Yeah.
And we were able to take some things out for the community as well.
Anybody who hasn't looked at the website, who's listening to this, should take a look, because Jen's posted a lot of before and after shots.
And on Facebook.
Quite amazing.
Oh, and I was sick last week, the week before, so Gina actually sent me most of those pictures of the barn and everything, and yes, I couldn't do it, we're a team. And it was great. I was like, excellent.
Mm.
Okay, Newtown newsletter. we have a new town newsletter.
It has not been published yet, but yes, we're collecting email addresses and we're starting to get people excited about it. We're just gonna put it out like, we're gonna start with once a month. It's gonna be a few things in it. Cause some people say that they're not into Facebook, so we want to just put out some things. So some of the things are gonna be on Facebook already, but some of the things probably won't be, but it'll eventually go on Facebook. So we're just gonna send out a few things and hopefully
So it's
get
a,
people interested.
it'll keep people interested in what's happening, and also it'll be a mechanism for people to learn
Yes.
about. Good things and bad things. So it's a sort of way to reach out to people
The other
in a direct
purpose
way to their inbox.
There is
of
two.
doing this is to get email addresses as climate change happens and we have things happening in Shaftsbury. Having a repository of emails helps us get out messages if we need to get them out if we were in an emergency state for things. So it's very important that folks sign up for this. It's on the website. It's very easy.
Also, there's,
Yeah.
and you also have the choice to give us your cell number. And in an emergency situation, we are eventually gonna have an emergency texting ability to text our citizens. Only if you want to. If you want to receive a text, like if there's like a little over a month ago, we had an emergency at the transfer station where the compactor broke.
Mhm.
It would have been nice if we had like, 150 citizens on that list. We could have said, hey, don't go to the transfer station if you need to get rid of your trash because our compactor's broke. You know, we could have told them. And they would have been like, oh, can't go there today. But we don't really have that ability to do that right now. But maybe in a month or two, we will.
Yep.
But we don't have enough addresses yet
Yeah,
to be able to do that.
it's
So-
really important to get addresses.
Exactly,
for it to
but,
work.
and
And it really can be useful for,
it could be, but we would not abuse it.
Road
We would
closed.
not abuse it. We're not gonna just send you a text and say, you know, we're gonna
Nice
only
day.
do that in like not really emergencies, but if it was an emergency, yes, we would. But we're not gonna like send a text all the time. We're just not going to do that. The
Spam
texts are gonna be
things.
like, yes,
Important.
in very
Days
important
and-
situations, right? But the newsletter is only gonna be once a month. So we're not gonna flood your inbox, we promise.
okay,
Very
Thank you.
exciting.
it is very exciting. Thank you, Jen. Okay, V-Trans culvert project and discussion of notifications.
Speaking of the newsletter,
Speaking of the newsletter,
another purpose for it. Oh, I'm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Would you
okay.
like to
Yes,
start
we got
this
a
whole-
lot of emails this week from concerned citizens. And I don't blame them. Because it wasn't, well, yes, it's V-Trans, but it's Vermont Rail replacing a very large culvert. It turns out when you have to close a rail line, you have to do the project in 20 days. So the hours that the trucks have been rolling through these neighborhoods has been lengthy. And when I spoke to a representative there, the engineer on the project, he said next week, which is this week, will be the worst of it. As far as the trucks and the block. And then after that, it will taper off considerably, but it won't be wrapped up until early November. So I think people would appreciate being informed, whether it's, you know, the Facebook or the newsletter. I just think it's a good courtesy to do, to take care of our citizens a little bit more and give them a heads up
Absolutely.
at different, if we know something 2 years in advance, then putting a system in place every 6 months, check in on it, and as it approaches, just give them a heads up.
I mean, as it happens, we're also gonna have to figure out a system to keep the town checking the V-Trans website. Because they only notify us once, of
Right.
something 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
And they don't notify citizens. So.
Right.
Yeah. So we're working on it.
Mhm.
But gonna implement it.
I can give you an update. The culvert's in, it's back up to grade, all the dirt's been put back in.
Wow.
They're laying the rail and ties tomorrow, and the first train will run on Wednesday.
Oh, that's great news.
That's great.
Good.
There's still a lot of riffraff on the stream, banks and all that sort of stuff, and like you said, it's going to go on, then they gotta start cleaning up everything down. First train is gonna run on Wednesday. Right.
That's good
So,
news.
the
Progress.
majority of the big trucks.
Great. Rich, I know you had emailed that you were gonna go to the V-Trans office in Bennington.
May I come over?
Of course, sure.
So,
This is
Good
Rich
evening.
Jorgensen. Rich.
39 Bank Street. So, I had started to count the number of trucks, but
Mm,
so, we've corresponded.
we have,
That's
yes.
Good. And, so it's good to hear, there's an end in sight. Actually, I've heard that from Galen Road, who owns North Bennington Variety. And it's kind of a joke we have, is if you want to know what's happening. Side Shaftsbury. You'll hear about it that North Bennington Variety. So, but I correspond with Christopher Taft, who's the district administrator for V-Trans, Bennington District. Just today, so waiting for
Okay, good.
a response, and the group of residents, who've spoken previously about speeding, this is this year's hot topic. Glad to know it will be ending. We all recognize the necessity of these kinds of projects, in terms of infrastructure. But this is 3 instances in the last year. In North Bennington and Shaftsbury, where V-Trans has had projects with very little or any connection. A project on Route 67 involved clearing for drainage last year. I communicated with David Kiernan at the time. He was scrambling, trying to grasp what information he could get. There was another drainage project pretty recently, actually, Bennington, where you actually North Bennington from 6 to 7. Important project, dealt with a lot of cooling of water, but really no information. It involved delays, traffic, and everything that we could manage, easily enough. But and now this project, obviously, that we have to start asking questions. So it's something on the page forum. The response came, and obviously, there were a lot of emails ensued. Something that you had communicated, Naomi, and I know you'll be working on it as a board, and call on behalf of the board, and any of us as residents, getting V-Trans to be more responsible, putting it that way, in terms of communication. And that's what I wrote to Christopher Taft. The projects are well thought out, taxpayer funded, obviously. A lot goes into the planning, the engineering, the logistics, the completion, but they really fall short on any communication. They do all that stuff really well. They do not communicate effectively so that we know what's happening.
Yeah, it's kind of
So that's
astonishing, isn't it? Yeah.
been a major grievance. I've communicated with Sheriff Belly as well today, and he responded immediately. A lot of these trucks have been just blowing down the road. Ignoring that we have for posted speed limits, our brand new digital speed monitor further up Bank Street, which has been, helpful, as well as on Rox Avenue. Big trucks, with rocks now they're in the floor. So everyone's concerned, obviously, over a long period of time does have to do with speeding and the risks to other people living on the road. And So. I mentioned this is the third kind of project in the immediate area, maybe there'll be more in the future, who knows, but, if V-Trans is willing to, let you know directly, let us know directly, of what you're doing, then you're gonna be very reactive. Very. I heard one individual actually went out onto, I believe, Rollin Road, and started stuff.
Oh, boy.
Those folks over in that part of Shaftsbury, just, nearby, on the back roads, they just, you probably heard from them. What's going on? What's going on? So now we know what's going on. I'll look forward to the trains again, since my backyard was right back up to see the train run. But I've encouraged or what I call our bank, Fox Bank Street, neighborhood group to be proactive about what's coming in 2 years. The Route 7 project. Everyone seen the copies of that. Because that's going to have a major impact. And hopefully they meet in person as the board has requested.
They have agreed to this.
That's good.
So we need a big turnout at that meeting.
Right, and you're aware that certainly David Durfee will be there, a representative, and Timothy Corcoran has indicated he would attend as well. Who's the ranking member of the House Transportation Committee. So, he weighed in pretty quickly, like, okay, let me know, I'll be there. So,
8,000 extra vehicles a day going through
right.
downtown Shaftsbury would be
Yeah.
really pretty
It's
amazing.
going to be,
6% of them tractor trailers.
So anyway, yeah, I'm also here to listen more and learn more about the energy plan, so I'll stick around.
Thank you.
Rich, are you hearing the rumbling of the diesel? There's a rumbling of the diesel that's coming through to East Welland Road. All night long.
We had a couple of nights, Thursday night, Friday night,
Yeah,
it was bad. It
yeah.
was bad, and people didn't, they were dealing with daytime, see the trucks, and then nighttime. It was all night long. And we knew what they were, and I think the drivers were doing their best to really drive slow and, be careful, but you want,
The job to do.
an 80 or 100,000 pound
Right.
truck is a turn on corner on Hobson Bank. You hear all the beers.
Yes.
Let's, keeping us informed, that's just, what we're both about.
Well, in this case, you informed us.
Well, it started with one neighbor, it's like, well, what's this about? It's like, oh, yeah, okay, let's, catching on to this now. And the pieces of information, it's like what Art had shared, I heard Wednesday, well, wait for their first train. Thanks.
Thank you. Especially with the North Bennington Emergency Management Exercise Planning.
So I had a lovely meeting with folks in North Bennington, the chair of the planning commission, Jim Sullivan, who used to be the executive director of the Bennington Regional Planning Commission, several of the firefighters and their chief, the fire department, to discuss North Bennington doing an emergency management exercise called the tabletop, where they simulate an emergency that might befall their town, and how and who would respond to those, and how we would do it to strengthen their emergency plan. They are working, it's called the LEMP, and every town has them. we're actually in progress of doing it and it is. What's the L stand? I'm trying to think. of
Local,
what my-
local emergency.
Emergency management
Plan, thank you, Len,
We're reviewing hours.
to do it.
There's a long form. We have the short form, so we're
Yes.
changing it to.
So, it is a huge thing in, as we, see the effects of climate change, how we become more resilient, and how we as a communities work more as a regional, group as opposed to kind of individual, towns. And so these emergency management planning exercises, involve folks from the state, they involve, all of our emergency, folks from EMS and law enforcement and fire, but also local administrators, and kind of go through a scenario if power were to go down, if cell phone access was gone, if multiple major roads that go in and out of North Bennington go out, and what would we do if we needed to stand up an emergency shelter? If the water went down, so there was no potable drinking water in North Bennington, so kind of the worst case scenario if something were to happen emergently. And so Shaftsbury has agreed as one of our neighbors to be a part of this tabletop exercise. And so it will be happening this fall and lots of folks involved in our town, including our Department of Public Works and Paula and Naomi and other folks will kind of be brought in to kind of be all together to talk through this exercise and hopefully strengthen both North Bennington's emergency plan, but also Shaftsbury's because we rise and fall as a community and as a region. So it was very interesting and I look forward to kind of seeing more of what's to come on that, but we'll be hearing about that as the fall.
Yeah, great, thank you. And we're planning to do such a thing in Shaftsbury probably in the spring. Tabletop exercise.
We're all on the same frequency with the walkie-talkies.
So, and that is a really interesting thing.
Yes.
So one of the things that we do talk about are all different kinds of communications that could or could not be used.
Yeah.
If we need ham radio
That's what we were
operators,
talking about.
there's a lot of things to think about.
Where
And
they were.
the state is very helpful in their emergency management system to kind of talk with towns about really the worst case scenarios, whether it's a flood. If the train that is parked in North Bennington were to suddenly have a terrible catastrophic thing happen to it, or if we had other kind of, terrible ice storms or other things that kind of cut off various parts of the community, how do we manage? Because we live on our cell phones now, but in emergencies, often they go down, or you can't or don't want to use those frequencies because emergency responders are trying to use those frequencies as we've seen in, school shootings and other things that, you have to be really careful and how you message out to a broad swath of the community so they know and are informed, but are not calling 911 when, 911 is trying to get their responders. So lots to think about, lots to kind of piece apart as you kind of walk through this. And so we were creating the scenario at this planning meetings so that then other folks who don't have this kind of background of things will then experience it and then decide or try to figure out how to solve all of the pieces that we're going to throw at our emergency management system.
So is the hospital involved?
They are, and oftentimes when they also do these statewide, and so statewide, they do have hospitals involved, but in this particular scenario, they are trying to get somebody to come to that tabletop, but it sometimes is a scheduling.
Yeah. We, long ago, we did one,
Yeah.
and the hospital just threw a monkey wrench right in the middle of it because they said we cannot accommodate 4 people who are
Critically injured.
critically injured.
Yeah. And so these are all
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yeah,
for
and
everyone
it was like, everybody was like, oh, my goodness. My goodness. And then they said, like the juveniles, at the explore work. So, yeah.
So
Yeah,
thinking through these
interesting.
pieces.
Yep.
It's complicated and complex
Yeah.
and really stresses the regionalness of
Mhm.
our ability to be working as a whole team in these situations.
And the newsletter and people signing up for that and potentially for the text function of it as well is. If cell service doesn't go down, in moments when cell service doesn't go down, it's gonna be a key piece of.
Yeah.
How we formulate
Information,
our
Communication.
local emergency management plan. Which
Yeah.
we'll be working on in the next few months. We are a very disparate town, Shaftsbury,
Yeah.
and getting the information out to the sort of four quadrants of it.
Figure out who has how many radios.
We have to figure out
Yes.
who has the emergency
And get somebody.
and get them in.
Get them back.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on that? Oh, yeah. Other business.
I think I only have one thing. I've called the owner of the buck stop twice, left messages, because we've had a few people complaining about the danger of that, going around that corner, and here are the gas pumps and people are parking right here, and it's dangerous. So I have several complaints and I've reached out and I will keep reaching out.
Because nobody's reached back. huh?
Nobody's calling me back. So, I mean, that I can walk right over there and ask, speak to someone, I can do that, I'll do that. Go in for an egg sandwich or something, and
Mhm.
can I speak to the manager? He'll be one of those. But. It's another action item, continuation,
Yep.
next week.
Okay, so action items, review of action items.
Got that. Buck stop.
Keep calling.
The
people.
call out to MSK and Chris Vanessa. We've got that. Potentially, some research into a pod or something else for the, file cabinets. And the Grand Elm Street, talking to DPW about that dangerous broken sign.
Yes.
I think there are quite a notes that I took.
Okay. So, we will now adjourn this meeting if I get a motion in a second, but I don't on that. And then we will open the public hearing on the enhanced energy. Thanks. Thank you. Nice to tell you.
Idea. Think of it.
All in favor?
Aye.